South Carolina stays undefeated because guess what? I mean, just absolutely cooking. That's exactly
Yes, nice.
that is exactly what happened. It was just cooking from Zia Cooke. 31 points in this one, 68-51 final. If you look at the final score, you would think this would be just a walk in the park for the Gamecocks, but that wasn't the case in this one, Steve. They didn't have the lead until the third quarter. The first half was actually a really tough go for South Carolina. The first quarter was pretty iffy. They just got over the 10-point mark in the first quarter after a 3-point shot. I mean, honestly, it was pretty tough for them to watch. South Carolina, though, got it done in the second half. They outscored Georgia by a large margin, 21-11 in each quarter, third and fourth quarter. And although Georgia has a lot of new players on their team, they only have five returning players, 10 new players coming in between transfers and 4 freshmen as well. They just couldn't stick up to the number one team in the country, Steve.
Yeah, and Georgia's not. You said they're very interesting.
They are.
I mean, I know everybody talks about battles, but I really like Audrey Warren. I think she has a really nice all around game. I truly do. Javen Nicholson, I would imagine she's going to be a matchup problem no matter who they're playing. I mean, I just think that Georgia, as you alluded to, maybe we need to watch them as they develop this year to see how good they are going to be next year. And you hate to say, well, let's look at this year for next year, especially with the chaos with the transfer portal and all the things that could happen within the thing. But I think Georgia's finally gonna start making progress with their women's program. I don't want to say that maybe they didn't pay much attention to it, because I don't know that they pay much attention to the men's basketball program either. I think all the other sports they definitely do, but I think basketball is just there because it's a contractual obligation, it seems, at Georgia. In order to get the TV money, they have to have a basketball team out there. But I think that's starting to change on both sides. So if they can build on Battles and Warren. And Nickel, well, Battles is Battles a senior, correct?
Yeah, she's done. Same with Brittany Smith as well. They both came over from UCF with their coach, and they've really, honestly, in my mind, been the team. Now, Brittany Smith looked really good in this one for the majority of this one. I just wish she would have shot more. She was 5 for 7 from the field, had 10 points. My issue with this one, and I wouldn't say issue, but my concern was Diamond Battles. She just didn't get going at all. She only had 1 point from the free throw line. She was 0 for 4, and once she just stopped shooting. And I think she just knew she didn't have it, but that was hurtful. They really needed her in the second half.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't enough for them. And that, honestly, the miscues from Battle was the reason why they lost this game, because they looked really good in that first half, but the adjustments that were made by South Carolina was needed for Diamond Battles to step up and the rest of this Georgia Lady Bulldogs. And they didn't. South Carolina got the win.
And it's unfortunate. Again, I did not see this game. I mean, I actually was looking at Georgia going into the game, went back and looked at a bunch of their previous games, and for some reason just didn't watch this game all the way through. I'm just looking at different highlights and reading some stories for both, for both Georgia and South Carolina's media market. But you can't have your big gun, just keep the gun in the holster. I mean, if you're not shooting well, too bad. You got to take at least some shots. You can't just totally disappear like that. Georgia doesn't have the depth of talent to be able to withstand that. No matter how well, Warren or Nicholson or Smith played, you need your big gun to be there every game. And you can live with that. I mean, if your star just doesn't have it, but is still trying to keep your team in the game or get your team back in the game, you can live with a 2 for 10, 2 for 15 performance. At least, okay, she was trying. She was doing everything she could to win that game. So it's kind of disappointing that you said, because I know that you had watched the game, that she sort of got gun shy. Yeah.
And what's crazy is that she had the same problem in the game against Alabama right before this one against South Carolina, and they lost that one also. They lost 56-53 to Bama, and Battles only had 1 point in that one as well. and she had 9 points in the game before that. And she's really struggled for the last 3 games, definitely the last 2. So I don't know if there's any underlying concerns or injuries. I don't think it didn't seem to be that the case.
Yeah, I was
But
going to
right
ask you.
now she's in a pretty tough slump.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. Did it seem that she was
No,
favoring a leg, or sometimes
nothing.
you can tell, that they're always like reaching for their hand if they're having a hand or a finger issue, but so nothing was obvious there. Well, again, it's still early. I mean, Georgia is 11-5. So basically, I think they can take that first half and say, look, we took it to the number 1 team in the universe. I think it's getting to the point that South Carolina is not. We can't even keep it on the planet. We need to expand it out and say they are just the best women's basketball team anywhere. I don't care how big these alien centers are. I don't care if they're 10'6" or whatever. South Carolina is just the best women's basketball team around.
Georgia looked better for one half, but that's about it. That's about it. As for Georgia, they got to take on Kentucky on Thursday night. Kentucky's 8-6. That could be a nice rebound game for Georgia. Maybe a way to get Diamond Battles back in the groove of things, because then they take on Florida, then they go against Ole Miss, and then they got to take on Tennessee, who is rising. I think we're going to see Tennessee back in where we need to see them in bracketology when we start talking about those coming soon. I'm so excited. Yeah, that's going to happen. I'm interested to see if we get Georgia's name in there when we start talking about it. But as for South Carolina, we got to talk about them. This team is just fun. And I mean, even though they struggled at the beginning in the first half there, Cooke was just electric. She was on fire. I like the playmaking that Beal had as well. I thought Beal did really good. And she didn't have crazy numbers, but when she took some really good shots. She had some really nice 3-point shots as well. Aaliyah Boston didn't really have a lot of stats as well. It didn't really seem to be the case. There were some moments in the towards the end of the third quarter that you'd think that she would have been in the game, and she wasn't. And not me, Steve. I'm not going to be ever questioning Dawn Staley. Not on this show.
No.
I don't think there's ever going to be a reason for that one. So whatever happened, it worked for her, but she kind of was off as well. She was only 1 for 6 from the field. She only had 4 points. So, hey, but for her, she didn't have to be good because Cooke did it all in this one. Yeah. We probably wouldn't be talking about Diamond Battles if someone else really stepped up for Georgia as much as we were. South Carolina went deep in this one. They went really deep in this one. They went 12 deep. And that's another really cool thing to pay attention to as well, because we're talking conference play here. And when we talk about some of these other top 25 teams, UConn comes to my mind right off the bat. They only play 7. And those 2 people on the bench are getting like the equivalent of 5 minutes total, right? Not for South Carolina. They had 3 players over 10 minutes on their bench. And then they had multiple players over 5 minutes. They really played 11. They had 1 person with 1 minute, but they really truly played 11 people from their bench. That's really impressive from this Gamecocks. And I think we kind of talked about it earlier in the season. We kind of saw it developing. Dawn Staley was kind of building all of this, and now we're seeing it in conference play. They look strong as ever, Steve, especially in that third and fourth quarter.
Do you think it was a load management decision, especially seeing, because again, apparently Cooke right from the beginning, it wasn't just a burst. Oh, no. Even with them trailing, right throughout the whole game, she was just on.
There was shots from Cooke that she took the 3-point shot. I won't forget it. I think it'll be instilled in my brain for a very long time. She took a 3-point shot, and right when she let go of it, she turned around and ran back. She knew it was going in. Like, she was just that on this game, and it was great. And it was just awesome to see when you knew it's like, you're just that confident. Be cocky, go for it, do your thing, because if you know you're on, awesome, go for it. And she was legit cooking.
Well, that's good. So maybe that's, Dawn Staley always seems to be thinking, not only is she managing and making adjustments in the game that she's playing, she's already thinking a week ahead. I mean, it just seems that, when you hear her in interviews, she'll bring something up, and then 2 games later, it's like, oh, okay, I get it now. I understand now what you were saying about this or transition, or she's just a special coach. She was a special player. She always had great court vision, and I think that's translating. Even though she's on the sidelines now, I think that's actually translating. And her coaching style and how she manages her roster. So, yeah, if they're going 12 deep and coming up with some big wins, that's trouble for everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to look forward to at South Carolina. They have Auburn 10-4 on Thursday, 7 o'clock Eastern time on SEC Network Plus, and then they play Mississippi State on Sunday. Should be a good weekend for them in the SEC. Let us know your thoughts in the comment description below about either the South Carolina Gamecocks or the Georgia Lady Bulldogs. Hit like and subscribe while you're there. And thanks for watching SlasherU.